In the 1960s, our homes told stories through avocado green blenders.
Radio Shack keeps you in constant communication with their affordable, transportable cellular telephone.
Hello?
Click dial phones and shag rugs underfoot. These weren't just decorations, they were part of the family. Quietly, one by one, they slipped away, but some still remember. Let's open the door to what we didn't realize was fading, the heavy glass ashtray. What story did that heavy glass ashtray tell from its place on the coffee table? It spoke of evening conversations that lasted past bedtime, of grown-up discussions over cigarettes and coffee while children listened from the staircase. Made from thick amber glass with geometric patterns, it anchored the living room like a crystal storyteller. The satisfying weight in your hands, the way it caught lamplight and scattered it across wood-grain surfaces. When guests arrived, it appeared automatically, not because everyone smoked, but because it represented hospitality, the promise that serious talk was welcome here. These ashtrays held more than ashes. They held the weight of adult conversation, the gravity of family decisions made in living rooms across America. The kitchen rotary phone. That rotary phone hanging in the kitchen was the family's lifeline to the world beyond. Its avocado green presence announced that this home was connected, modern, ready for whatever news might come spinning through those numbered holes. You'd dial with ceremony, finger in the hole, clockwise rotation, listening to that mechanical symphony of connection. The coiled cord stretched across the kitchen like an umbilical cord to neighbors, relatives, and the wider world. When it rang during dinner, conversations paused, not in annoyance, but in anticipation. Who was calling? What news would travel through that faithful green guardian? It didn't just facilitate communication, it orchestrated the rhythm of family life, the ebb and flow of news, gossip, and connection that kept households beating in time with their communities. The aluminum TV dinner trays. Those aluminum TV dinner trays whispered promises of the future from their cardboard sleeves. They told stories of progress, of women liberated from endless kitchen duty, of families embracing space-age convenience with silver-wrapped optimism. Each compartment held its own chapter, protein here, vegetables there, dessert in that tiny corner like a sweet epilogue. The metallic scent, when you peeled back the plastic, was the smell of tomorrow arriving early, of convenience, conquering tradition, one frozen meal at a time. 25 cents bought entry into the modern world where dinner could emerge from the oven fully formed, perfectly portioned, ready to fuel families racing toward an automated future that gleamed like aluminum and tasted like possibility. The console stereo. The console stereo commanded the living room like a wooden altar to family culture. This wasn't just furniture. It was the household's cultural heart, where music became communal experience instead of private pleasure. You'd lift that heavy lid with reverence, revealing turntable, radio, and if fortune smiled, an 8-track player nestled inside like technological treasure. The warm glow of vacuum tubes warming up told the story of patience, of good things worth waiting for. When the needle dropped onto vinyl, the whole family gathered around this sonic campfire, sharing melodies that became the soundtrack to growing up. Turn It Down was never really about volume. It was about claiming space for adult thoughts in homes where music had become the universal language of connection. The plastic slipcovers. Those plastic slipcovers, protecting the good furniture, told complex stories of aspiration and protection. They spoke of families who owned beautiful things but lived in constant fear of ruining them, of mothers who loved their children but loved their investment in respectability more. The clear vinyl, stretched tight over sofas and chairs, created a barrier between daily life and special occasions, between who the family was and who they hoped to become. That distinctive squeak when you sat down was the sound of middle-class anxiety, price of owning nice things in a house full of real life. These covers preserved fabric but sacrificed comfort, protected investment but prevented intimacy, telling the complicated story of families caught between practicality and pride. The metal bread box. The metal bread box on the kitchen counter stood as a monument to the staff of life. Its cheerful presence, usually white or yellow with bread printed across the front, announced that this household understood priorities, that good bread deserved protection and respect. Inside, Wonder Bread slices waited in perfect formation, or homemade loaves rested in wax paper shrouds, each one telling stories of morning toast, lunchtime sandwiches, and the sacred act of breaking bread together. The satisfying thunk when the lid closed was the sound of provision secured, of families who planned ahead and understood that the day's energy came from proper nutrition stored in proper containers. This wasn't just storage. It was a declaration that bread, the foundation of every meal, would be treated with the dignity it deserved. The glass milk bottles. Those glass milk bottles waiting on the front porch each morning told stories of trust between neighbors. The milkman's route was a daily thread connecting households, each bottle a promise kept, a relationship honored, a community sustained one delivery at a time. Heavy glass vessels with cream floating like golden clouds spoke of purity, of products that traveled from farm to table with integrity intact. You'd shake gently to mix that cream back in, participating in a morning ritual that connected your family to dairy farms you'd never see but somehow knew were real, were honest, were part of the larger story of how good families fed themselves. Which of these daily rituals made your house feel most like home? The wooden recipe box. That wooden recipe box near the stove was the family's culinary memory bank, holding more than ingredients. It preserved love letters written in measurements and techniques. Each index card in careful cursive told stories of women who came before, of Sunday dinners that brought families together, of traditions passed through hands that understood food as love made visible. The soft rustle of cards being shuffled was the sound of connection across generations, of daughters learning from mothers who learned from grandmothers in an unbroken chain of nourishment and care. These boxes didn't just organize recipes. They preserved the intimate knowledge of how to transform simple ingredients into the taste of home, the flavor of belonging, the satisfaction of feeding people properly. The metal lunchbox. Every school child's metal lunchbox told the story of morning care transformed into midday comfort. Decorated with heroes and cartoon characters, these lithographed treasures carried more than sandwiches. They transported mother's love across the dangerous territory between home and school. The matching thermos nestled inside like a liquid hug, keeping soup warm when cafeteria offerings seemed foreign and unfriendly. That satisfying snap of metal latches closing was the sound of home, sealed up tight, ready to travel, ready to remind wandering children that someone, somewhere, had prepared for their hunger with thoughtful hands and loving attention. The party line telephone. And just when you thought we'd cataloged them all, those party line telephones wove neighborhoods together in ways social media never could. Picking up the receiver meant entering a shared conversation space where Mrs. Henderson's Sunday dinner plans became community knowledge, where privacy was negotiable and connection was automatic. The distinctive ring patterns, two long, one short for the Johnsons, created a musical language that announced whose turn it was to join the electronic village square. These weren't just phone systems. They were democracy in action, community building through shared infrastructure, proof that sometimes the best technology brings people together instead of isolating them in private bubbles. The metal ice cube trays. Those metal ice cube trays in the freezer compartment told stories of persistence and muscle memory. Each aluminum tray, with its individual wells, represented the understanding that luxury, even something as simple as cold drinks, required effort technique, and sometimes genuine wrestling with mechanical resistance. The ritual of filling, freezing, then battling that metal lever to crack cubes free was a daily reminder that convenience wasn't automatic, that cold refreshment was earned through small acts of domestic determination. When cubes flew across the kitchen floor, it wasn't failure. It was the price of living in an era when even ice required participation, when households earned their comforts through daily engagement with the physics of modern life. The folding TV trays. Those folding TV trays revolutionized family dinner by liberating meals from formal dining rooms and delivering them directly to the glowing hearth of television entertainment. Made from aluminum tubing with vinyl tops in space-age colors, they announced that this family had embraced casual modern living, had chosen comfort over ceremony, connection over protocol. The wobbly legs that never quite stayed level told stories of adaptation, of families learning to balance dinner plates and attention between meatloaf and bonanza, between nourishment and entertainment. They represented a fundamental shift in how Americans defined togetherness. No longer around formal tables, gathered in front of shared screens where stories came from Hollywood instead of around the family circle. The glass percolator coffee pot. That glass percolator coffee pot bubbling on the stovetop was the household's morning alarm clock, its distinctive sound announcing that the day could officially begin. The visible brewing process through heat-resistant glass turned coffee-making into kitchen theater, where grounds danced and water transformed into liquid energy before your eyes. The rich aroma that filled every corner of the house was more than fragrance. It was the scent of possibility, of energy gathering, of adults preparing to face whatever challenges the day might bring. These pots didn't just make coffee. They created the morning ritual that transformed sleepy households into functioning families, one perfectly timed percolation at a time. The metal colander. The metal colander hanging beside the kitchen sink told stories of harvest and preparation, of families who understood that good food required proper handling from garden to table. These punched aluminum bowls weren't just tools. They were bridges between raw ingredients and family meals, between Mother Nature's bounty and kitchen transformation. The satisfying weight in your hands when draining spaghetti or washing fresh tomatoes from the backyard garden spoke of substantial cooking, of meals that required multiple steps, careful attention, and respect for the process of turning simple ingredients into nourishing sustenance. That metallic ring, when accidentally tapped, was the sound of serious kitchen work, of families who cooked from scratch because that's what feeding people properly required. The manual can opener. Every kitchen drawer held a manual can opener that separated the skilled from the struggling, telling daily stories of competence earned through practice and patience. These simple metal tools with sharp cutting wheels required technique, timing, and genuine engagement with the task at hand. The distinctive crunch as the blade bit through tin was the sound of self-sufficiency, of households that didn't depend on electricity or complicated mechanisms to access their food. Mastering the smooth, confident motion required to achieve a perfectly clean edge was a small victory that announced kitchen competence, domestic capability, the kind of practical skill that defined capable adults in an era when opening a can required actual participation rather than push-button convenience. The rolling TV stand. Those pressed wood TV stands on rolling casters represented the revolutionary idea that entertainment could be mobile, that families could rearrange their gathering spaces according to mood, season, and the angle of afternoon sunlight streaming through picture windows. Made from fake wood grain veneer with metal trim, they announced that this household had embraced flexibility over formality, adaptation over tradition. The squeaky wheels that left permanent tracks in wall-to-wall carpeting told stories of experimentation, of families discovering optimal viewing angles for Ed Sullivan on Sunday nights or Walter Cronkite during evening news. These weren't just furniture. They were symbols of domestic democracy, where comfort could be negotiated and entertainment spaces families could evolve with family needs. The glass butter dish. Those glass butter dishes with matching dome covers transformed simple dairy products into table centerpieces, telling stories of families who believed that even everyday necessities deserved elegant presentation. The satisfying weight of pressed glass, the way condensation formed on the inside when butter achieved perfect spreadable consistency, spoke of attention to detail, of meals treated as occasions rather than mere fuel stops. That gentle clink when replacing the cover after passing it around the table was the sound of civilized dining, of families who understood that how you served food was as important as what you served. These dishes elevated butter from basic ingredient to table decoration, proof that ordinary moments could be made special through thoughtful presentation. The metal mixing bowls. Every kitchen cabinet held a set of metal mixing bowls that nested together like Russian dolls, telling stories of preparation, planning, and the sacred mathematics of feeding families properly. These shiny stainless steel vessels reflected not just kitchen light, but kitchen wisdom, the largest for bread dough and holiday stuffing, the smallest for delicate tasks like beating single eggs or melting chocolate. The satisfying ring, when they touched, told stories of Sunday baking sessions, holiday preparations, and the daily alchemy of transforming simple ingredients into sustenance and love. Each bowl earned its place through countless family meals, becoming seasoned veterans of kitchen campaigns that sustained households through every season of family life. The fabric potholders. Those fabric potholders hanging beside every stove were more than kitchen safety equipment. They were small textile libraries holding stories of women who understood that protecting hands meant protecting the ability to care for families. Usually handmade by grandmothers or church ladies, each potholder carried the weight of afternoon sewing circles, winter evening projects, and the understanding that kitchen work deserved beautiful protection. The burn marks and food stains they accumulated weren't signs of wear. They were badges of honor from years of faithful service to Sunday dinners, holiday feasts, and the daily act of transforming raw ingredients into nourishment through heat, time, and careful attention. The metal kitchen canisters. And just when you thought we'd discovered them all, those metal kitchen canisters standing at attention on countertops told stories of organization, preparation, and domestic competence made visible. Labeled flour, sugar, coffee, and tea, they announced to anyone entering the kitchen that this household understood priorities, that good cooking started with proper storage of essential ingredients. The satisfying pop when lifting airtight lids was the sound of freshness preserved, of bakers who planned ahead and understood that perfect cookies required perfect ingredients stored in perfect conditions. These weren't just storage, they were declarations of kitchen authority. Proof that serious cooks kept their staples properly organized and instantly accessible for whatever culinary inspiration might strike. The wind-up alarm clock. Every nightstand held a wind-up alarm clock that ticked away the darkness, telling bedtime stories through steady mechanical heartbeats that either lulled families to sleep or drove them to gentle distraction. These round metal faces with luminous hands painted time in soft green light, their nightly winding ritual a meditation on the passage of hours, the approach of tomorrow, the faithful persistence of time itself. The harsh metallic ringing at dawn wasn't just alarm, it was announcement. The daily resurrection call that transformed sleeping households into functioning families. $2 bought reliable accountability that never forgot its purpose, never needed electricity, never offered snooze buttons or gentle compromises with morning responsibility. The glass medicine bottles. Those glass medicine bottles lining bathroom cabinets told stories of trust between families and neighborhood pharmacists who knew every household's health history by heart. Made from amber or cobalt blue glass, each bottle was designed to return home like a faithful messenger, be refilled by hands that mixed powders and counted pills with personal care. The satisfying weight in your palm, The way colored glass filtered bathroom light into jewel-like patterns spoke of medicine as craft rather than commodity, of healing relationships that transcended mere transactions. These bottles held more than remedies. They contained community trust, professional care, and the understanding that health required partnership between families and neighbors who understood healing as both science and service. The wooden clothespins. Those wooden clothespins living in cloth bags beside washing machines told stories of self-sufficiency and the deep satisfaction of clothes dried by sunshine instead of electric convenience. Simple split-wood clamps that had survived technology unchanged, they represented the understanding that some old ways simply worked better than newfangled alternatives. The smooth feel of wood bleached white from countless trips through weather, the satisfying snap when they opened wide, spoke of laundry as partnership between human hands and natural forces. They held more than wet sheets against prairie winds. They secured the connection between families and the elements that had sustained households for generations before electricity promised to improve everything. Each clothespin carried the scars of faithful service, tiny teeth marks from the spring mechanism, smooth grooves worn by fingers that had pinned thousands of loads to backyard lines. The wood itself told weather stories. Bleached pale by summer suns, swollen by spring rains, cracked by winter freezes, yet somehow enduring season after season with the kind of resilience that modern plastic could never match. Mothers would sort through their cloth bags each Monday morning, discarding the broken soldiers and keeping the veterans who still held their grip, who still possessed the tension necessary for battle against prairie winds that could tear wet sheets from weaker hands. The ritual of hanging laundry became a meditation on seasons, weather, and the ancient rhythm of wash day that connected 1960s housewives to centuries of women who had performed this same dance with wind and sunshine. You'd check the sky for clouds, feel the air for humidity, calculate the hours needed for thick denim to dry versus delicate cotton blouses. Each item had its proper place on the line. Heavy towels on the outside where wind was strongest, delicate undergarments in the protected center, sheets arranged so they wouldn't tangle when prairie gusts turned clotheslines into sailing ships of domestic purpose. The sound of clothespins in their bags was the rattle of potential energy, wooden promise that today's washing would become tomorrow's fresh-smelling wardrobe. Children learned to help by carrying the heavy cloth sacks, by handing up pins one at a time to mothers who could clip a sheet to the line faster than any machine could fold it. "Don't drop the pins in the grass," came the automatic warning, because wooden clothespins scattered in tall prairie grass became an afternoon treasure hunt that delayed dinner and tested everyone's patience. The metal kitchen scales, those metal kitchen scales with sliding brass weights, transformed cooking into precise science, telling stories of women who understood that great food required exact proportions and careful attention to detail. Cast iron platforms with balancing arms demanded patience, skill, and respect for the chemistry of baking, where too much flour meant disappointment and too little meant disaster. The careful ritual of sliding weights along marked arms until ingredients achieved perfect equilibrium was meditation disguised as measurement, a daily practice in precision that elevated cooking from guesswork to craft. These scales didn't just weigh ingredients, they weighed the cook's commitment to excellence, measuring dedication alongside flour and sugar. The scales themselves were substantial pieces of kitchen architecture, built with the assumption they would serve multiple generations of family bakers. Cast iron bases heavy enough to anchor any countertop, brass fittings that would develop patina but never lose accuracy, calibrated weights that rang like small bells when they touched the metal arms. The larger weights bore the confident marks of their measurements, 1 lb, 8 Oz, 4 Oz, stamped deep into brass, that would outlast the hands that used them daily. Learning to use kitchen scales was a rite of passage for young wives and daughters, a skill that separated casual cooks from serious bakers who understood that bread was chemistry, not just mixing and hoping. You'd place the empty bowl on the platform, slide the counterweight until equilibrium was achieved, then add flour by careful spoonfuls until the arm balanced again. The moment of perfect balance was deeply satisfying, a physical confirmation that you had achieved the precise measurement required for grandmother's dinner rolls or mother's prize-winning apple pie. These scales taught patience in an era increasingly obsessed with convenience. There was no rushing the process, no digital shortcuts to perfect measurement. The ritual required attention, presence, and respect for the ancient understanding that good bread demanded accurate proportions. Women would stand at their kitchen counters, sliding brass weights with the concentration of pharmacists, knowing that Sunday dinner's success depended on getting the measurements exactly right. The scales accumulated the evidence of years of faithful service. Flour dust in the joints, tiny dents from dropped spoons, the warm patina of brass handled by countless hands. They anchored kitchen counters like altars to precision, reminding everyone who entered that this household took food seriously, that feeding people properly required tools designed for accuracy, not convenience. The glass candy dish. Every coffee table displayed a pressed glass candy dish that told stories of automatic hospitality, of families who understood that any guest crossing their threshold deserved sweetness and welcome. Filled with wrapped hard candies, chocolate creams, or those mysterious ribbon candies that lasted forever, these crystal guardians transformed simple treats into elegant offerings worthy of the most sophisticated visitors. The anticipatory rustle of cellophane wrappers was the sound of graciousness made audible, of children learning that sharing sweetness was one of life's fundamental courtesies. Made from clear glass with intricate patterns that caught lamplight and scattered it in tiny rainbows, they announced that this household understood the sacred mathematics of hospitality, that small gestures carried large meanings. The candy dish itself was often a wedding gift or inheritance, passed down through generations of women who understood that hospitality required proper vessels for sweetness. Cut glass with elaborate patterns, pressed glass with geometric designs, or crystal with faceted surfaces that transformed ordinary table lamps into sources of dancing light across living room walls. The weight of quality glass in your hands, the precise edges that required careful dusting, the way afternoon sunlight streaming through windows would create prisms of color across mahogany furniture. Each type of candy held its own meaning in the unspoken language of social grace. Wrapped hard candies announced casual welcome, help yourself, stay a while, no ceremony required. Chocolate creams elevated the occasion, suggesting that this visit warranted something special, something that spoke of careful selection and genuine appreciation for your presence. Those mysterious ribbon candies that seemed to last forever were conversation starters, icebreakers that gave awkward guests something to do with their hands, while nervous mothers offered coffee and asked about families. The fabric doilies. Those delicate fabric doilies protecting every wooden surface told stories of patience, skill, and the desire to make ordinary objects worthy of admiration. Hand-crocheted during long winter evenings when television programming ended at midnight, each circle and oval represented hours of careful work, weeks of dedication to creating beauty that served practical purpose. The intricate lacework required gentle washing, careful starching, and precise pressing to maintain crisp perfection. But they transformed furniture into gallery displays, everyday objects into showcases worthy of magazine photographs. These weren't just protection, they were small masterpieces that announced to anyone entering the home that beauty mattered here, that ordinary moments deserved extraordinary care. Each doily pattern told its own story through inherited techniques passed down from European grandmothers who had carried crochet skills across oceans in steerage compartments. The pineapple pattern with its intricate points and swirls, the spider web design that required counting stitches like mathematical equations, the simple shell border that even teenage daughters could master during summer evenings when schoolwork was forgotten. Thread came in a crew, white or sometimes pale pink, purchased by the skein at 5-and-dime stores where clerks knew every woman's preferred weight and color. The creation process was meditation disguised as housework. Winter evenings, after supper dishes were cleared, mothers and daughters would settle into living room chairs with thread balls and steel hooks, fingers working by lamplight while radio programs provided background entertainment. The rhythmic motion of hook through thread, the gradual emergence of pattern from simple chain stitches, the satisfaction of completing another row without dropping or miscounting. Count twice. Crochet once, grandmothers would warn, because mistakes discovered after hours of work meant unraveling back to the error and starting that section again. The finishing process was as elaborate as the creation. Completed doilies required careful washing in gentle soap, then stretching on special frames with rust-proof pins to maintain perfect shape while drying. The starching came next, mixing powder with water to achieve just the right stiffness, then dipping each doily and working the solution through every loop and chain. Finally came the pressing with warm irons on thick towels, each point and scallop carefully arranged to showcase the pattern's geometry. The finished products transformed ordinary furniture into display cases, announced to visitors that this household valued handmade beauty over store-bought convenience, that someone here possessed the patience and skill to create loveliness with nothing but thread and determination. The metal spice racks, those metal spice racks hanging inside cabinet doors, were aromatic libraries that told stories of culinary ambition, of families who understood that flavor came from exploration rather than limitation. Each small glass jar contained fragrant possibilities: oregano for Sunday spaghetti, cinnamon for Saturday morning pancakes, whole peppercorns for sophisticated seasoning that announced this household cooked with intention rather than accident. The satisfying organization of alphabetized seasonings spoke of kitchen authority, of cooks who planned menus and understood that great food required preparation, forethought, and respect for the ancient alchemy that transformed simple ingredients into memorable meals through careful application of aromatic wisdom gathered from around the world. The spice rack itself was usually painted white metal with multiple tiers designed to maximize the narrow space behind cabinet doors while keeping every jar visible and accessible. Each glass container was identical, small, clear, with tight-fitting lids that preserved potency and prevented moisture from destroying carefully hoarded seasonings. The labels were either printed or handwritten in careful script. Garlic powder, paprika, bay leaves, sage, each name a promise of flavor transformations yet to come. Building a spice collection was a gradual investment in culinary sophistication. Young brides started with the basics: salt, pepper, and maybe garlic powder, then slowly expanded their aromatic arsenal as confidence and recipes demanded. A jar of oregano opened up Italian possibilities. Whole cloves transformed ham from ordinary to holiday-worthy. Bay leaves elevated everyday pot roast into something that filled the house with sophisticated fragrance. Each new addition represented culinary growth, evidence that this cook was ready to tackle more complex challenges. The ritual of seasoning became a daily lesson in chemistry and creativity. You'd open the cabinet door and scan the neat rows like a library patron choosing books, selecting combinations that would transform tonight's chicken into something memorable. The careful measuring, just a pinch for delicate flavors, a good shake for robust seasonings that could handle enthusiasm. The understanding that timing mattered. Some spices released their power early and needed long cooking to mellow, while others saved their impact for the final moment before serving. Refilling empty jars was both economy and ceremony. The bulk spice section at the local market offered glass jars filled with fragrant possibilities, each one measured carefully into small paper bags twisted tight to preserve precious contents. At home, using a small funnel to transfer paprika or ground cinnamon from bag to jar became meditation. The bright red powder or warm brown dust settling into clear glass containers that would sit ready for the next culinary adventure. The full spice rack hanging behind the cabinet door was proof that this kitchen was prepared for whatever recipe inspiration might strike. The wooden recipe stand, those adjustable wooden recipe stands holding cookbooks open beside busy stovetops, told stories of serious cooking commitment, of families who understood that good food required following directions instead of improvising with hope and crossed fingers. These kitchen helpers accumulated flour dust and sauce spatters like battle scars, becoming seasoned veterans of countless culinary experiments and Sunday dinner preparations. They represented the understanding that cooking was both art and science, requiring reference materials, technique, and the humility to acknowledge that some knowledge came from sources beyond personal experience. $2 bought kitchen assistants that never complained about flour fingerprints, never judged failed experiments, never questioned the cook's determination to feed families properly. Made from pine or oak with adjustable angles to accommodate different cookbook sizes, these stands transformed kitchen counters into culinary command centers, where recipes became readable reference instead of guesswork and memory. The wood grain showed through years of kitchen service, darker where hands had gripped the sides, worn smooth where countless cookbooks had rested, stained where sauce had splattered during particularly ambitious Sunday dinners. The adjustable mechanism, usually a simple wooden peg system, allowed everything from thin pamphlets to thick church cookbooks to find their proper reading angle. The relationship between cook and recipe stand was one of daily partnership. You'd prop open Joy of Cooking to page 247, angle the stand just right to catch overhead light, then refer back repeatedly as you worked through complex instructions that assumed knowledge of techniques your mother never taught you. The stand held its position faithfully while you measured, stirred, and tasted, never losing the page, never closing the book at crucial moments when your hands were covered with flour or raw egg. Each stand accumulated its own history through stains and wear patterns that told stories of culinary ambitions. The dark ring where a hot pot had rested briefly during complex recipes, the flour fingerprints embedded in wood grain from years of checking measurements, mid-recipe, the sauce spatters that created abstract art patterns across the wooden surface. These weren't signs of carelessness. They were evidence of serious cooking, proof that this kitchen helper had participated in the creation of thousands of family meals. The cookbook collection that surrounded these stands was equally telling. Better Homes and Gardens, The Joy of Cooking, church fundraiser recipe collections, and handmade books where women had copied their mother's best secrets. Each cookbook held its place with worn spines and food-stained pages, but the recipe stand gave them dignity, transformed them from cluttered countertop chaos into organized culinary libraries where knowledge could be accessed safely, while hands stayed busy with the serious work of feeding families properly. The ceramic cookie jar, Every kitchen counter featured a ceramic cookie jar that told stories of sweet anticipation and midnight adventures, of families who understood that some treasures were worth hiding just for the joy of discovery. Shaped like friendly animals or cheerful characters, these whimsical storage vessels transformed simple cookies into hidden delights, ordinary treats into anticipated surprises. The ritual of lifting that heavy ceramic lid was ceremony disguised as snacking, the satisfying clink when it settled back into place, the sound of secrets safely kept until the next raid. Made from thick pottery with hand-painted details, they represented the sweet side of kitchen life, where practicality mixed with pure joy, where function danced with fun in daily celebrations of homemade happiness. The glass water pitcher. Finally, those heavy glass water pitchers commanding respect at every dinner table told the final story of proper presentation, of families who believed that even everyday meals deserved elegant service and thoughtful attention to detail. Substantial pressed glass vessels with perfect pouring spouts spoke of table ceremony, of meals treated as occasions rather than mere fuel stops. The way ice cubes clinked musically against thick glass sides was the sound of civilized dining, of families who understood that how you served sustenance was as important as what you served. The pride in matching glassware, the way light danced through cut glass patterns during Sunday dinners, announced that this household honored the sacred act of gathering around one table, sharing nourishment and conversation in equal measure. These weren't just objects filling rooms. They were the cast of characters in the story of home, each one playing its part in the daily drama of family life lived deliberately, carefully, lovingly. Which characters do you miss most from your family's story? Share below and pass along these fading memories.